Yeah, I mean, oh my god. Do I never want to do blueprints again? This is why I didn't want to do them before, by the way. Like, I want this to be on record that I never wanted to do a blueprint situation. I just did it because I needed the self-esteem boost after basically pouring out my entire heart. Um, Super duper empty. So, made a blueprint so I could keep going, stay on track, do stuff, and now I've been following the blueprint and like regaining energy after that huge emotional dumpy. Um, and yeah, but the blueprint, like, I fucking hate like making myself blueprints and then following them. It's my anti-authoritarianism. It really flares up. I know it's dumb, but it gets so big. At some point, even if I'm the one who designed it, I'm like, why am I following in this routine? Me, routine is death. Just like anything that is static too long is unchanging, and anything unchanging is dead. I don't have an irrationally sized and compulsive fear of death. You do. Anyway, finishing up this blueprint model situation. I guess I spent too long. That was like 2 whole minutes complaining. I'm sorry. Way too long complaining. 3 different things, 4 different things in this last set. There's a set of 3 and then there's just 1 left. After that, kind of breaking out of the 3 set system at the end there. The next 3 that we're doing is just gonna check out the bio, psycho, and social just like triplicate lens for viewing our living experiences or the way that we perceive and interact with the world. This is a concept that I encountered in school in psychology, this idea that we are experiencing life through both a biological, psychological, and a social lens. Like at all times, it's always all 3. And there's biological, psychological, and social factors that prompt different aspects of the other 2 factors. So they're really interconnected ideas. So we're gonna spend 1 episode each talking about each one. For bio, I guess I was being pretty goth. I wrote diet, dirt, and death. And right above that, I wrote, what does internalizing environmentalism mean? Because, like, to me, the biological system is integral, like, integrated. It's just deeply intertwined with the concept of environmentalism. Like, I don't think you can care about the biology of you or another being without considering the environment that you and the other being exist within. At least that is my perspective. But there's a bunch that goes into it. I wrote diet and dirt and death here because of that like cycle of birth and death and like eating and yeah, composting and dirt and all of this super grim sounding stuff. But it is, I mean, that life cycle is pretty much like the cycle no matter what for anything biological. So it's important to like just kind of feel like confident, I guess, about your understanding of how like things break down, how they contribute nutritionally to your food, like what the dirt is up to, you know. Like I remember learning about the Dust Bowl and being like, holy shit, you know, can you imagine land so tired that the entire topsoil just like flies off and becomes dust? Like that's so sad. That's so sad. I'm looking forward to just kind of chilling and talking again, like not necessarily having prompts. It's been fun to be more structured, and I feel like I've said a lot of great stuff within the structure, but I kind of like the casual, just rambling conversation style of address, and it's just like a lot less pressure for me to do it that way. So I think I'm probably going to switch back over to like unscripted, unblueprinted, undocumented, um, like way of jumping on and kind of discussing stuff. I'll just kind of see how we go from there. But yeah, I guess from like what does internalizing environmentalism mean? To me, it really does mean internalizing like the fact that you will die, like remember you will die, memento mori, like this idea that your life is finite. And if that's the case, like I've always thought, you know, like, okay, I try to give myself the benefit of the doubt. I'm like, I'll get 90 years, totally. Just gotta take care of myself and I'll get 90 years. But like trying to assume a certain lifespan and then like consider yourself as a creature within the context of your own care, within the environment that you happen to live in, and just thinking about, you know, how do I best care for this creature? How do I best like make sure that there's good soil for the food that this creature's gonna eat, whether it's a grass eater or an omnivore or a carnivore. Like keeping healthy dirt is huge. And like a lot of people just can't say that they have healthy dirt or healthy water. I know I mentioned in the last couple episodes, I feel like the last fever dream in some senses, but I was really talking about the waterways. I was like, guys, if we like protected the watersheds and like changed our legislation to reflect that in a way that was significant and meaningful, you know, what a I won't say what a coup, but what a like move that would be as a step forward in our government, quote, quote, theory. Do we actually have a government? Do we have a people who own the power? Great question. But, yeah, this, like, waterway idea was, like, I just kept adding on to it in my head. I was like, oh, you could put not just property taxes, but, like, educational taxes, all sorts of interesting, like, shifting of, like, legislative priorities surrounding property and like water health and public health. I just can't get over that. I'm like, that's nice, you know. I think another thing I said in the last one was like, we're always gonna have to deal with the specter of like our own evil, essentially, like whatever it is. Outsized oligarchy, I think, is what I was talking about, but just like any specter of human evil that we like understand exists and is real in the world or has existed in the world. I think that's what gets so many people down with the apathy bug is like, okay, not only just how do we get from point A to point B, but like, you know, it just takes one really shitty person in a position of power to ruin a lot of progress. Or even just mildly shitty person in a position of power. But yeah, I feel like most people spend a lot of their time from the bio perspective, like thinking about their biology, thinking about the world through the perspective of being a physically, like, I've heard the term meat creature, but like just a physical, biological creature. The level to which they can like accept and internalize their own eventual demise has a lot to do with how capable they are of really thinking about the realities of biology, in my experience and my observation. Um, I guess, like, in order to contend with something so complex, you really have to have like a steady focus. I've often heard the system of oppression we find ourselves living within referred to as a death cult. I think that's interesting because it's not so much about like worshipping death. But kind of more like emulating it, pretending to be dead, playing dead. When you think about how static our institutions are, yeah, it does seem like we spend most of our time after being born begging to go back, right? And I totally understand the people who think we're actually in the Matrix. It does seem like there's something calling us. You know, from the other side, as it were. But I love that. I love our fascination with death. I think it's probably good for us ultimately, you know, we're still contemplating it, still figuring out, like, what is this brief time of conscious awareness? We should have things to query and question and wonder about. That's kind of like the whole point of having awe in life, right? And finding the beauty, or sorry, finding the terror in the beauty. Mwahaha. It's funny, I gave myself such a brief prompt for the bio one, and then for the psycho one, I did how do we build psychologically resilient community in increasingly dynamic times without falling into classic historical pitfalls that reinforce isolationist or imperialist thinking? Like, okay. You can tell I only really ever have, like, one thing that I want to say. It's always the same thing, it's so funny. Me just being like, we have the power, we have the power. We do, we have the power. Okay, so yeah, continuing on with the blueprint, bio for the biopsychosocial of life. I think I set it up pretty well in the last episode, about things, talking about environment and like becoming better environment tenders, becoming better city planners, becoming more equitable in the way we distribute people and resources in our urban centers and in our rural communities, and having better interconnection between those two. I think for me, that's what I think of when I think about like human environment. I also think about how like groundbreaking it was that planet Earth included urban environments as a type of environmental niche because humans have created it, and it really like wove us into the story in a way that was gorgeous and, you know, really thoughtful. So shout out Planet Earth, and all of the nature documentaries, especially the ones of the early 2000s and 2010s. You've really been going off. So I appreciate that about you. I also like have just been feeling really, what is the word, like kind of sad, like down, I guess, about my own content. And like initially these workscapes were made to be like a buffer between, you know, my thoughts in the world, but like I get frustrated because I go back and listen, and if I want to like pull something like a clip of what I said, it has lo-fi attached like almost always, and that's frustrating. Like I've really been trying to fine-tune this process because it's just like stealing, for no reason, to be using the lo-fi artist music. And I was recently introduced to the concept of like there are people out there who are actively, you know, curating a digital presence through like that work with me, parallel play, kind of body doubling, like channels, and I don't want to take away from what they're doing, by trying to do both that and like commentary or like podcast discussion style format. So I'm like, okay, there are already people doing this. There are already like, you know, more ethical ways of consuming lo-fi art out there that are kind of more dedicated to the space, the culture. So I'm like, I probably should just sort of chill on the workscape thing. Maybe I've been thinking about just more thoughtfully layering my sound layers, and if lo-fi ends up in it, it's more of like an accident than like just an accident of background and the fact that I listen to it. And it really needs to just like stay in that particular sphere. So I've been feeling really like exhausted with myself that hasn't been the case as I've been experimenting with the workscape concept, because it is like a really useful layer to the presence online that I've been working on. So I don't want to like lose it entirely, but I found the kitchen commentary track just like really invigorating, and I want to keep that going along with the video kitchen recipes. And I've been finding that like way too hard to do, to juggle along with this like main commentary podcast. So that's just like you know, some of what I've been dealing with emotionally and just feeling awful, like a thief. For the lo-fi artists, I got like called out on Spotify for having it, and it's just like wrong. And so I'm just, you know, frustrated with that and going through my content and trying to remove stuff, like if it's 60% or more me, leaving it up, but if not, taking it down as far as the workscape goes. Um, and like for the most part, it is like just stuff that I captured and is me, as far as like doing the work to record things, and process them and redistribute them with new thinking and formats. That's all like genuinely me, but it's kind of like my voice just needs to get louder, I guess, is sort of more the thing, is like the parts of it that are me need to be out front and like staying there more. And that's way hard to do with the amount of types of, or the amount of things that I'm like trying to juggle. So and what's frustrating to me of the whole part of it is that like that was the entire point of doing the workscapes in the first place, was just like using minimal lo-fi, like distanced lo-fi, to illuminate the beauty of just the natural habitat of the human like sound environment. Um, because you can think about our biological habitats along dimensions or like layers of, like our different senses or sensory input, sensory intake, whatever's, I can't remember what it's called. Nervous system, yeah. But like, I mean, just the five senses, right? Like touch, taste, sound. Sight. And of course, smell. But when we think about like human environment and how to improve it in a way that like is respectful of all the other creatures on this earth and their environment, there are like countable solutions to this. You know, so that's definitely my intention with the workscape. I was trying to give myself like a sound environment that I could speak during, so that I would feel a little bit like more bold, you know, in speaking, just like having that additional sound layer, that I find soothing. But also just illuminating the way that lo-fi adds to and highlights the human experience. Of an incredibly rich sound layer that we all experience and share together. So I'm going to be more thoughtful with that. I know that was a danger during the initial early R&D stages, was just seeing how frequently I was willing to like hide behind the lo-fi in my voice, or my like just like where I was, right, and stuff. I don't know how closely you've been following the story, but definitely have this like falling silent, speaking softly at the wrong times sort of problem. Um, and I do feel that that is like a I don't know, something I've been fighting all my life, I guess. Not to be dramatic. Yeah, but gosh, getting a handle on our biological environment has got to be one of the biggest challenges we face as a species. Why? Why the floor kibble? You have bowl kibble right there. Don't worry, it's grain free. They just love the crunch. Yeah, we free feed. She doesn't overeat. She is an orphan kitty. She will be reassured that there will always be food, even if it's not the exciting pate stuff. I'm not creating food uncertainty or encouraging it in the cat that likes to kill mice. I'm convinced she just thinks it's fun, which is why I've been trying to play with her more, but oh my god. She has high standards for play. And I'm literally her poor servant. Yeah, as in like not good at being a servant. That's right. But yeah, I've been kind of tired of thinking about, like environmentalism within the context of our whole species, and I'm sure this has come through, but I've been kind of tired of thinking about it, while my own, people, some would call it hyper cleanliness habits, but my own, like, hygiene habits have been, falling to the wayside like it does when you deal with an ongoing, like, long-term illness. Really just, I mean, bringing out a lot of empathy for disability or chronic illness folks lately too, and just like, honestly, that empathy and solidarity is the only thing that keeps me moving sometimes. I'm like, other people have to suffer like similar things, like, and that's always the case when I get sick, is like, I'm such a baby, like, I'm a baby. I hate getting sick. I hate being unwell. I don't like feeling not good. I take a lot of my like basic genetic health for granted a lot of the time. My dad was like that too, um, in my view, but I'm trying to be better at that. And I know, or like I've been told that I like try too hard and I hold myself to impossible standards and I'm a perfectionist and da 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 da. And I'm like, okay, but what's the alternative, right? Like, is it never trying, being apathetic, not caring, not being, you know, not aiming for the moon or whatever? I was told even if you miss, you'll land among the stars, but that was in kindergarten. Maybe the rules changed. I don't know. But yeah, huge baby in the sense that like do not like being uncomfortable or, you know, not just like not feeling 100% because I like to do 100%. So if I don't feel 100%, then I can't do 100%, which means I have to scale back everything I do, which makes me feel like, frustrated. I do like what I did with the no cat. Oh gosh. What's the word? Oh, the microbial layer. Like, honestly, that worked as a model. I don't know if my biggest concern is that the ones that were microbial had too much lo-fi in them still. But they compress really nicely. Aren't you glad I recorded one sound of rain? Out of all those million videos of rain that I took over the winter, only one survived. Without lo-fi in them. Jesus. So... Come here, sound of rain. Turn off. There you go, buddy. I gotta wonder, like, is this really 6 hours of compressed kitchen music sound? Kitchen music sound? It does sound kind of like music. Somebody, like, gave me shit for having, well, she wasn't giving me shit. She was just, like, pointing out that all of my kitchen stuff is glassware. And I'm like, oh. Like, yeah, it makes pretty noises. Okay, yeah, it is. It's totally compressed. No, don't save the product before closing. I feel like that's one of the hardest things to like come to terms with when you do something really quickly or cutting corners or something you've never done before. Is like a lot of times it just like made sense at the time and now it doesn't make sense anymore and you just have to move on, but you want like an explanation for why you did something one way instead of another way. The minute you have hindsight, you're like, oh. But yeah. Well, this is hour 16. I really like the compressed. I like what came out of the compressed hours. That continues to be the case. So we're gonna just stick with the things we like. It's one of the best parts with updated technology is just being able to adapt and change like the stuff you don't like and move on. That's what gives me so much hope about the future. I know I mentioned this before, but like people are just going to default to things like community care and mutual aid because we are like by default pretty altruistic as a species and we're social creatures. So like we just need to, you know, rid ourselves of this pesky opposition whence ever it comes. Wasn't good English. And the opposition does becoming in many forms. I mean, depression is one huge one that I can think of, obviously, but I'm experiencing some creative depression right now, obviously. Feeling like my voice isn't loud enough for what I'm trying to do, and like I'm not strong enough, and I'm just not good enough. Like I'm not artistically competent enough to do what I want to do, like in a sustained way. I don't think the model I built is sustainable and it needs to be changed, and that makes me sad too. And like part of it makes me sad is just because like I know I have somewhat of an audience, and when you change things up too much on your audience, they get like discouraged and they disengage, and I don't want to have audience disengagement either. You know, it's difficult to.
The Palestinians, Lebanese, and Yemenis will not stop fighting until Palestine is free. And we must recommit to being the resistance front in the U.S. in this fight for liberation today. They can't give up, and so must we. We're at the precipice of change, and as we say, it is always darkest before dawn. And I know the dawn is coming. Israel will fall in the same way as Nazi Germany. Their murderous people will be rejected in their apartheid state, and there will be one Palestine for all people, regardless of religion, as it was before the state of Israel was created.
Another thing that I like about the like choppy, way background lo-fi of these compressed episodes is like the way it kind of teases song patterns out in your mind, and you like think you hear something, you're like, is that the Titanic theme? And then it's gone, or like, is that the Willy Wonka song? And it's like, you know, on the one hand they're super famous and they're really like in just amazing scores, so could be, but also like, are you just making it up because of how famous it is and how like similar sounding so many other songs are? Because like, oh my god, yeah, I don't know, it's cool.
Yep, that's me. Always just trying to keep up with the truckers and the Francos. Don't do math, guys. Stop it. Do less, actually. Don't help this death machine at all. God, stop doing math. If you're doing that, stop it. Stop it right now. Losing teeth picking at your face, like you're losing giant pieces of your mind. No thanks. Look at your brain can't recover. Doesn't mean you shouldn't use it like that. Use it wisely.
I guess I'm going to spend the last little bit kind of talking about the different points in which the biology connects to the other aspects of this triplicate, mainly the psychology and the sociality. But I'm sure that you can imagine that it connects to both of them, and they both connect to bio.
That actually did get the fucking 1/3. The mathematical ones, I think they're really good. I think they're accurate.
And I guess,
This
I
feels
mean,
also like geode, like crystal.
obviously the biological and the psychological are connected because
And
the
this is for me.
psychological is
Eventually,
your
when you reach
perception
some
of your experiences as a
like that,
biological creature,
something.
right? It's the subjective reality
I think
through
very
which
quickly after
you
making that note, it's actually
filter every less
uh,
sense or sensory input.
yeah, just
And we
changed my
build
mind.
those subjective realities together in life through being
This
nurtured.
even has poetry, so it's really
Our
cool.
childhood
But like,
experiences are particularly
and then thinking of
important.
this style,
Anything
which
during
is
the
like
developmental age
this
prior to
geometry crystal
26
from like a
has
person.
a significant and disproportionate impact on who you become and how you view the world, and thus how you move and act in the world.
But yeah, did she ever explain math to me? And it was like understandable for a 14-year-old girl without me actually having to do it. Which is 14, so I was almost 13. I was probably 14 or 15. I would have been as young as 11 though. I can't quite remember. A lot of different things happened.
And your biology predisposes you in a variety of ways
I would
towards
think
a
that would
variety of things.
as everyone.
Your cellular composition will predispose you
It's
towards
just like
stuff. I know I mentioned
something like that.
alcoholism, but anything, right? The genetic
I will still make
predisposition
that
for
note for the job
whether
interview.
your eye
It's
color
essentially
is what it is.
what was your like college
We
or
all
maybe
we all
just
did some basic biology
like
science,
straight
right?
engineering vibes.
But it predisposes us towards a type of psychological worldviews we end up constructing as well as our living experiences in the world. This is one area where people get really discouraged about like making positive changes in our society and in the world. This particular spot where we can see how determined people are in their choices and in their worldview based on where and how they grow up, and to some extent who their parents are, right? Their biology, this ancestry. We see this inheritance of trauma, predisposition towards problematic behaviors. And also is like some objective axiomatic fact that humans or people just don't change. What do you think, Cassine? Do people change? She says that thing is not petting or playing with me, so I'm not interested. Cats are so perfect. The thing is, you know, people on their own don't change. There are a lot of ways that we only change as a result of societal pressure, or cultural pressure, or institutional pressure, but I would argue that organizational pressure only leads to conformity, not true change, not true conversion. Well, cultural and social changes, it, it starts with individuals. but we don't change alone. So it starts with our close others. It starts with the bonds that we cherish the most and how they make us want to be better and do better. I also think she's eating because she's bored. One of the greatest mistakes of my life was getting a cat that was smarter than me before I was ready to have a cat at all. I'm doing you a disservice, my beautiful, intelligent lass. If no cuddle, why is it cuddle shaped? Great question. Great question, Cassie. But yeah, where were we? I guess that's mostly it. I would add that in modern times, our what's the word? our ability to update our psychological realities and curate more intentionally kind cultural realities is greater than it's ever been. And that's a really exciting time to be alive. I know being a warrior for kindness mostly just feels like futile struggle against a tidal wave of sludge every single day. And you can be really numb to like being overcome with sludge every day, like most people are overwhelmed by that they forget just how much kindness they and like their people are putting out into the world. Like there's really such a significant amount. And what sucks is that it like changes regionally, like the what counts as kindness changes based on circumstances, much like anything changes based in context. So it can be hard to be both relativistic and accurate. When trying to judge the way that I try to judge, you know, if there's more kindness than cruelty in the world today. And usually the answer is yes. So keep being kind to yourself, especially when you're building worldviews. Oh my god, what an important construction. It's one reason trans people just have it like so much easier than cisgendered people is that they have to like intentionally construct their gender. So once that's done, you know, like with so much more thought and like foundational knowledge and skill. I know I've gone over this before, but anybody who has to do that like against the norm is already dealing with like hella muscles in the worldview construction department. And like racially speaking, the pressure is even worse. So the skills and social creativity and the strength are even more present in actual reality of like people's labor capacity, skill sets, etc. when it comes to influencing culture or changing, like creating massive sweeping radical change. It's gonna be the people who build the quickest stable internal structures. Stable being a fucking wild word. Non-binary folk out there holding entire spectrums down. Oh, that's me. Haha. Self-congratulation hour. One thing I admire about trans women specifically, I should say, is how big of people they have to be to get over the feeling stupid part. Like people who are socialized men get trained out of like anything that makes them feel stupid really, really young. Really young. And girly things have been coded as stupid for, you know, all of patriarchy. So, yeah, the stupid versus intelligence thing being male coded and like, oh my, I know. There's just so much going on there. But like, to be socialized and like brutally trained into this like masculine identity that turns out was like undesired, and not like the chosen identity to like be holding in space, in social space with people, and having to like cognitively deconstruct and reconstruct your sense of self in a way that makes sense and feels right to like your reality and your truth. That's like so fucking hard to do. First of all, most people do it in small pieces over time, or like honestly never, because it's difficult. That's why the slow like uh developmental time period locked thing is so intense in our social norms. Like, I mean, I don't know, I'm just speculating now, but I don't know, getting over the like feeling stupid, because like being a girl is all about kind of being like okay being cringe, right? It's okay to feel stupid and to be cringe and to be overly emotional or messy, or I don't know. You have a lot more latitude in womanhood for all of these things. And like men just like no. Like anything that makes you feel dumb, that's like your man card being revoked right now. I'm like finishing punching the holes or whatever. This isn't a coffee shop. But like, it's the fact that trans women like work through that entire like cognitive block that was intentionally programmed into them, right? Through societal coding, through adult messaging, through all this stuff. And like, I'm sure there are plenty of trans women out there who did it literally because they were tired of feeling stupid, for having feelings, right? Like, this is insane. It would be easier to be a woman than keep dealing with this internal like agony. I'm sure there are some out there who are like honestly easier to change entire gender. But like either way, it's just so brave. Okay. So we did bio. Next one we'll focus more on psycho, but we did start talking about how bio touches both psycho and social. And we will continue to bring up the bio when we talk about the others. So yes, this 3-part piece will also essentially be composed of 3 additional parts. As always, thank you for listening. And good night or good morning or whatever time of day it is for you when you hear this. Okay, bye.